What's up, guys? Big Clive 34 coming at you today. Thank you for joining in. Today we're talking about the top 5 most expensive cars to cross the auction block at Barrett-Jackson. 2020 Supra sold for what, 2.2 million? The 2019 Ford GT with the 001 VIN number and the Golf livery, beautiful car, sold for 2.5 million. Where would they stack up against the most expensive cars? Because that's a lot of money, $2.5 million for a car. The cars that we saw last week at Barrett-Jackson weren't even close, so let's jump right into it. Coming in at number 5 was an auction in 2006, 1954 Bonneville Special concept car, which sold for 3.08 million. It's kind of crazy that a lot of these cars are from like 13, 14 years ago, right before our economic collapse in 08. You might be thinking this looks absolutely nothing like a Bonneville that I know. It existed about 3 to 4 years before the actual Bonneville came out. It was a Motorama car, and if you don't know what Motorama was, it was essentially a GM-based like auto show of sorts, where they would bring out all these concepts and different ideas. It honestly sounds a lot more exciting than what we get at auto shows these days. But this car is special because there was 2 of them made. The thing about these concept cars is that GM has a strong destroy this after we're done using it policy. So with vehicles like this, they should never have even made their way out of the dealership, which is what makes them so valuable. It was a creation of Harley Earl, who was one of the biggest, most popular people for styling their cars. Moving on to number 4, it's another similar story, but this one actually has a little bit of a conspiracy theory behind it. Things get a little bit weird. It was in 2005. It was an Oldsmobile concept called the F88. It would sell in Scottsdale for $3.3 million. There are a lot of stories about this car because, again, it was a car that allegedly should have been destroyed. It went to Gateway, Colorado Auto Museum, appropriately named for its location in Gateway, Colorado. I believe they still have it. It was another Motorama car, another Harley Earl car, and it was one of 2 that were complete cars. Now, there was rumored to be some shells floating around, but rumors fly around things like these. The interesting thing about this is that because it was a car that was supposed to be destroyed, it was hidden by disassembling it and putting it in crates. It sat there in crates for years and eventually was reassembled and then in 2005 brought to auction. What makes this car really neat is that it could have changed the landscape of GM forever if it actually made its way to production. So essentially it was based off of the 1954 Corvette chassis and platform. The 1954 Corvette wasn't selling very well at the time, so they decided right before, like they literally had orders for this thing and they decided to nix it, and it was supposed to be destroyed. But think about that, if this thing came out, Oldsmobile could still be alive today. Who really knows what could have happened? That's what's so cool about these cars, is they're the coulda, woulda, shoulda cars that could have changed history. We go from $3.24 million at number 4, and we jump to $4.32 million at number 3. Number 3 is another Harley Earl vehicle. I take it that Barrett-Jackson really is in love with Harley Earl. It is the GM Futureliner 1950 model year. GM was running something called the Parade of Progress. They would take this giant motor coach that they designed out. There were only 12 of them ever made. I think that there are 9 documented to be left. But they would take these things and travel around, and then they had a giant stage fold out of the side, and they would preach about, you know, the future of cars and you know, technology and all this stuff. And it seemed like an era where people were really obsessed with the future. So I guess that GM was trying to play into that kind of a promotional piece that makes this thing come in at number 3.
Okay, now 4 million 2. 4 million 2. 4 million 1, 4 million 2. 4 million 1, 4 million 2. 4 million 1, 4 million 2 going once. 4 million 1, 4 million 2 going twice. 4 million 1, 4 million 3, 2 going out of the third last call. You want 2? So
At number 2, this one might be the most memorable for most of you because it happened the most recently in 2013. $4.62 million in 2013 is George Barris's original Batmobile movie car. It was built from the original 55 Lincoln Futura concept car. There were 3 others that were designed after the fact. 2 were used for like promotional reasons or car shows or whatever, and 1 was actually used for racing, oddly enough. Those were worth $225K to $600K as opposed to the $4.62 million. And there's definitely a lot of replicas of this car out here, but there's only 1 original which brought $4.62 million and then was subsequently flipped right after. They don't say how much it was sold for, but you can only imagine if you just spent $4.62 million on a car and you go to sell it, you're going to want a little bit of a come up, right? Arguably, it could have even been for more than our number 1 candidate on the list. Number 1 on this list happened in 2005, the 1966 Shelby Cobra 427 Super Snake that sold for $5 million. In today's money, that would be about $6.58 million. And it's crazy that not only has a car at Barrett-Jackson never reached $6.58 million, it still hasn't reached the $5 million that the car brought, which is kind of crazy considering we're 14 years later now. Money is worth a lot less. So essentially people should be spending more dollars to get vehicles. The reason why it is what it is because of the history behind it, because it is another true one of one, the only known one. Like, even with these other cars that are incredibly rare and are more likely than not one of one, like the F88 concept and the Bonneville, we know that this car was truly a one of one, and the history behind it is just amazing. The second one ever built was actually for Bill Cosby, and the car scared the shit out of him, so we sent it back to Shelby American. They sold it to somebody else. The guy who got it, the story is that he actually drove it off of a cliff, so yeah, that kind of sucks. Moral of the story is that we know that there's only one single vehicle left of this kind, and it belonged to the one and only Carroll Shelby, the legendary automotive designer and race car driver who was a visionary and way ahead of his time. He said that when he built this car, dual supercharged 427 Cobra, he wanted to, quote, have the fastest, meanest car on the road, end quote. And I think that he did that. At the time, it was 2,500 pounds and 500 horsepower, which is an absolute riot to be behind the wheel of. Pretty much the opportunity to own Carroll Shelby's one-of-one car that is the car that inspired a lot of automotive design and engineering, and just, you know, the concept kind of drove the next couple decades of automotive design and has inspired the cars that we know today. So that is a very, very cool, not only car, but piece of history to have.
This is it.
The record is broken. And then some.
The goal here was to set out and try and figure out what makes these cars at Barrett-Jackson worth a lot of money, because to somebody like me watching who's not super into the really old cars, it's kind of like there's a lot of cars out there that are similar. There's a lot of concept cars that never made it to production. There's a lot of perfect examples of very, very rare cars out there that are also incredibly old. So according to this list, what makes cars worth a ton of money? If you want to go out and invest in a car, which is probably a terrible idea, it seems like the cars that are one of one or close to it, and true one of one, not like this list of options makes it one of one, but it's really a one of one car, something associated with an iconic designer, something with a really good story behind it, or something that is just so world famous that somebody has to have it. And every single car on this list, outside of the Futureliner, which is just really, really cool and different and pops. And by the way, the guy who owned it allegedly only wanted to get like $600,000 out of it, so I think 4.3 million he made out pretty good. But all of the cars are pretty much one of one or close to it, and then they have that extra element to them. So if you see a car like that, you can get it for cheap, maybe go grab it. What do you think of this top 5 list? Maybe I'll do a top list overall of auction cars if you guys end up liking this video. But yeah, that's about all I got. So thank you guys very much for watching, and I appreciate it. This has been Big Clyde 34. Thank you guys very much for your likes and subscriptions if you're on YouTube, or shares if you're on Facebook watching this. So I will catch you guys next time.